I'm going to take all of that world of experience, and we're going to start talking about how do we solve some of our biggest challenges. So right away, what are the biggest challenges? And it was really interesting because over 70% of the C-suites said that internal challenges were our number one challenge to growth, which blew me away. Right. Because we like to say that we point our fingers outside, right? It's our competition. It was COVID. It was, right. There's always something external that's keeping us from doing what we want to do. But what it said is that we're in our own way, right? We're our greatest issue to creating long-term sustainable growth for our businesses. So that's number one. Number two was a lack of understanding of the voice of our customers. Yet everyone recognizes it's the highest voice of authority in our business. None of us are going to say we're not a customer-obsessed organization, right? But if you look even beyond what we said as our C-suite peers, and you go to the McKinseys, the Forresters of the world, they'll say we falter as a B2B industry. We don't spend the right amount of time, the right amount of dedication to learn the voice of the customer and therefore embed it into our go-to-market strategies. So that's the second one. The third one, I call the hidden challenge because nobody talked about it. But as soon as we started bringing it up, everybody agreed. And actually Forrester agreed it was the number one challenge. It's trust. And I'll accentuate it with a stat that came out of the LinkedIn Edelman Trust Barometer, the most recent one. Talked to 32,000 B2B buyers, right, over, across the world. And what they said, 61% of those respondents said that they think that we are being intentionally misleading in the information that we are giving them. Not that we didn't distrust it, but it went to another level, like we're intentionally misleading them. And I know that's not the way that either of you operate, but we are all lumped into the perception of how we sell in the B2B world, right? So we're supposed to be trust marks. And I'm going to kick us off there, and I'm going to pick on you again first, Baris, that you actually said in our last conversation that it's the most important thing that we need to fix is trust. And I just love to get your thoughts on that as we get started here.
I'd love to hear Rhiannon's thoughts on this. But if I look at my calendar as a CRO, and I'm sure a lot of CROs I'm probably facing, looks like from the survey, facing the same challenge, which is how do we gain the trust of our customers and the prospects and the community? And I look at that as a outcome of, if an organization is aligned, which was the number one topic that you mentioned, that 70% people believe alignment is important. I think lack of alignment internally, that means, do we have our act together as a company? Is product speaking the same language with sales? Is sales speaking the same language with marketing? Is marketing speaking the same language? When we talk about ICP, do we all agree on the ICP? Do we all agree on the market opportunity? Do we all agree on our value proposition? And if you lock every one of those key stakeholders across functions in the company, because I've done that in the past where you ask the ICP question, who are we serving and who's our ideal customer profile? You ask that to 6 executives, you get 6 different answers, right? And then you extrapolate that and you ask that same question to cross-functional leaders, your chief product officer, or your chief customer success officer. And then you ask the same question to your CFO and you ask it to the leaders and you get 10 different answers or 20 different answers, right? And that to me shows misalignment. And if you start there, then of course your customers are confused. Of course, you're not building the trust with your customers because that's the outcome. Your lack of alignment internally shows in your customers' belief in what the heck you're doing, right? What problems are you solving, which is the second issue, which is the voice of the customer that you mentioned. So I strongly believe trust with the community of your customers, trust with the customers starts with your internal alignment. I think, and I see this over and over again, we as CROs and CMOs and CEOs, and you look at the peer, I think that's our job. Our job is to get our ducks in a row and our people in a row. Because honestly, I think the biggest assumption that we make is we believe our people are communicating. We believe our leaders are aligning on the ICP, are aligning on the value proposition, are aligning on the metrics that are really important. We assume that's happening, but sometimes when we dig in, it's not happening, right? And that shows in the trust with our customers. So I'll leave it at that. I know we can unpack every one of those things, but that's the kind of the framework that, we all get challenged with. But then I think that also creates opportunities as well.
I love it. Rhiannon, I know you got a ton to say here.
Yeah. I laugh at us in the B2B space. We often act like our buyers aren't human. Of course, trust is at the center of what they do. They're betting their careers on some of the decisions that they take and the companies they choose to partner with. And people buy because they trust. And how do you build trust? You build it through your brand and through your voice of customer. So I'm not surprised to see that as another factor that's cited in the challenges that are coming up. We are constantly needing to build that brand through the market, through the customers that we serve. And that's ultimately what gets you on day one lists. So the challenge I know personally that a lot of CMOs are facing, one, because I face it myself sometimes, and certainly amongst my peer community that you hear time and again, is marketing is being ratcheted down to focusing exclusively on demand gen and overspending on programs that are designed to drive revenue at the net new revenue for the business at the top of the funnel. And I think more strategic organizations, and Baris, this goes to your point, I think about alignment, more strategic organizations and more strategic CMOs recognize that their responsibility is actually full life cycle and making sure that the investments that we're making don't just support new revenue acquisition, but also retention and expansion. And that's building trust and confidence amongst your client base. And if you do that effectively, that then becomes the referral channel for your business, but one that doesn't show up on spreadsheets, can be very difficult to quantify in a conversation when you're accustomed to walking in with charts and data that support the ROI investment of marketing dollars. So I think all three of these topics from a CMO perspective, absolutely intertwined. Full life cycle CMOs surely must be feeling, spread a bit thin because there are so many challenges that we're trying to face simultaneously. And that lack of alignment at the executive level, Baris, that you spoke to quite extensively feels very real, but it's on us as CROs and CMOs to figure out, what do we prioritize? It's not that anything on that list isn't important. We just can't do it all at once. But deciding where to start our focus is critically important, and then making sure that the investments we're making in the business, and particularly in the marketing organization, are aligned to that strategy. Super important.